here we are again with another little gem for you. This time it's linear phrasing. Linear phrasing is thought of as a means by which you play fills. It's not just that, actually. It can also be used as grooves. Now, I've actually used linear phrasing for a very long time, and when I first found out about it, it was just an amazement to me. The thing is, it will actually open out your thinking process as regards how you work things out. It's kind of exciting too. Now, when we think of fills, we think of this kind of thing. Basic, very basic, and actually very useful, particularly to actually learn how to go from one drum to another, to learn about your position. But that really is probably where it stops these days. If you want to play something that's slightly more interesting, then we tend to use linear phrasing. Linear, as the name suggests, is one sound at a time, so it's all in one line. When we play, what we're doing is, well, the original way of actually splitting this up came from a man called Gary Chaffee, who I've had lessons with, and who I had lessons with a fantastic teacher called Bobby Armstrong, going through Gary's books, the Patterns series. They were very good. Now, I tend to think of the basic way that he set it out as being the perfect way to start. So you would think in terms of groups, and rather than just being with the hands and on the snare, we can use these groups between the snare and the bass drum. So the bass drum is the thing that's actually going to finish each group. So if we think about the groups themselves, there could be groups of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8. Now this, as I say, is the way it starts. But basically, if you take a bar of 4/4, there are 16 16th notes in there. And the groups are about how you split that bar into smaller pieces. So for instance, whereas I played 1 Eander, 2 Eander, 3 Eander, 4 Eander, 16 notes between the snare and the 3 toms, so it was 4 notes on each one. Now I could do the same thing, but it would be an even group of 4 and 4 and 4 and 4. And for that, the even groups finish with 2 bass drums. So that phrase would look like this. I'm going to put it on with a metronome at 75 beats per minute. The simple thing there was I was playing right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot. And because we then start with a 1 usually on the bass drum at the beginning of the new groove, that meant that there were 3 bass drums and 1 at the end of the linear phrase. When we first start, we do exactly what I've just showed you, which is to play right, left, foot, foot, right, left, foot, foot. So we keep it on the snare drum. But as we start to improve and we just get to feel that combination, which is fairly straightforward, it must be said, then it becomes far easier to voice it slightly differently. In other words, put it on the toms or use the hi-hat in combination with the snare drum perhaps. So play around with that one. In the meantime, I should also tell you about 2 more so that you can actually really delve into this a little deeper. I would like to show you how to play 8 and 8. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 and a 4. So all I did there was to take 6 notes on the snare, 2 on the bass drum. Even phrase, you see, it's finishing with 2 bass drums. So it's 8 and 8. But because you've got 6 notes in the hands, you can actually play around with it. I started playing around with those, and the bit at the end was I just played 2 hands together. So that really is just worth mentioning, purely because it's not linear. But just because you may do one combination where it's both hands, snare and cymbal, say, or playing a groove with the bass drum coming in under the hi-hat or even under the cowbell, it still works out as being linear. So now the last one I want to show you is 3 and 5 and 3 and 5. This time, because it's an odd group, each group ends with a single bass drum. 3 and a 5 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1 and a 3 and a 1. By playing around with these, you should come up with quite a few of your own combinations. And once you really drop into this, it will really help you understand odd time signatures. That's all I'm saying for right now. If you've enjoyed this and you found that this was helpful, if you want to come over to Gary's online drum school, there's plenty more where this came from.